Hi there. Welcome to the last webinar training for the Adult Learning Kitchen series. I'm Abby Smith, the Nutrition Education Program Coordinator at Hunger Free Vermont, and I'd like to thank you all again for volunteering with our Learning Kitchen series. This webinar will cover the content of the last 3 lessons in the 6-class series. It is designed to prepare the nutrition educator to teach the classes, although if you are a host, a chef, or another volunteer who's interested in what the lessons are like, you are most welcome as well. I'm glad you've joined us. It's great to have you. Now let's get started. Some things to consider. I hope that your series is going well and that you're having a great time with your classes so far. Here are some basic elements to consider. What level of attendance are you experiencing each week? As you know, classes should have a minimum of 8 registered participants, and the goal is for all of those participants to attend at least 4 of the 6 classes in the series. Are the students eager to participate? Are they completing their take-home challenges and making the recipes at home? If you're noticing any discouraging trends in your classes, please make some time to meet with your host and chef to brainstorm some solutions that could address them. If this isn't possible, or you have further concerns after meeting with them, please don't hesitate to call or email me for additional support and ideas. My contact information will be up on the last slide of the presentation. Are you using any incentive items? This might be a good place to start addressing any potential concerns. What kind of feedback have you gotten from participants or their families? Do you have feedback for Hunger Free Vermont about the program? I want to encourage you to contact me at any time throughout the series to share anything that comes up that could help us to improve the program or any other item you think we might simply want to know. Before we get into those topics, I'd like to take a quick moment for a couple of logistical reminders. Please make sure that you print out the attendance sheet from the online toolkit at our website and bring it with you every week. We'll be collecting this at the end of the series and using the information to report on our program. Remember that you will need to have a minimum of 8 participants at the first class. Maintaining regular attendance can be challenging sometimes, especially when you're working with busy parents of young children. We encourage you and your host to discuss strategies to keep attendance strong. Providing childcare is very helpful for many adult series, and weekly reinforcements might also be effective. If at all possible, we recommend holding your classes during a time when the participants are already scheduled to convene, like as part of a weekly meeting, a play group, or a support group. If you find that you're consistently getting very low attendance, please give us a call so that we can work together to figure out the best plan for your particular class. Let's get started with Lesson 4, which focuses on meal planning, food shopping, and food safety. Each lesson has several goals and objectives that encompass nutrition, cooking, and food safety. The Lesson 4 goals are to plan balanced and affordable meals based on personal eating habits, family food preferences, and the MyPlate recommendations, to keep perishable food out of the danger zone, and to prepare freezer-friendly recipes to save time and money. Here's a list of handouts used in Lesson 4. This lesson contains a variety of activities designed to get your group thinking about how to be a savvy shopper. Since the next lesson will be a field trip to a grocery store, this class is designed to prepare the group to make the best of their shopping trip. After discussing at-home goals from week 3 and completing the cooking activity, ask participants to gather at the center of the room for a fact versus fiction style activity. There are several statements about grocery shopping that are intended to stimulate discussion. Ask participants who agree with the statement to move to the right side of the room, those who disagree to move to the left side, and those who remain uncertain to stay in the middle. The statements are not meant to be absolutes, and there may not be one right answer. This is simply a great opportunity for participants to share their experience and knowledge and to learn from one another. Now, let's take a look at the first worksheet in the lesson. The Let's Make a Meal activity gives participants a chance to create real, balanced meals according to MyPlate recommendations and kitchen staples a well-stocked kitchen may have. Participants are encouraged to brainstorm with a group while keeping in mind a meal that their family members will like. Before moving on to the Planning a Menu handout, you will survey the class on their current shopping habits and discuss the good habits in the curriculum. These are outlined in your educator materials. You will discuss shopping habits, the pros and cons of coupons, and how to plan ahead. Planning ahead is a key concept that will help them to be sure their meals are balanced and affordable. I'm going to focus here on the steps you will follow in helping your class make their lists, but please read through your guides to see the other activities included in this lesson. The next activity, Planning a Menu, takes meal planning one step further, asking participants to plan an entire day of balanced meals. Again, keeping in mind foods that their family will like. Let's take a look at the handouts on this slide, which participants will use to begin planning a menu. They will work in groups to create a full day of meals. As you can see, they are encouraged to keep balance in mind with the Food My Family Likes checklist for each MyPlate food group. Once meals are planned, have participants put the ingredients on the shopping list worksheet that will be in the next page of their book. Planning a menu will be this week's at-home assignment. Ask participants to discuss meals with their families and make a shopping list for the week to bring to the next class. A shopping list is one key tool for sticking to a budget and making sure to purchase a variety of foods for balanced meals. Unit prices are another great tool, and we'll discuss those in a moment. This week's at-home work is particularly important for participants. In order to participate in the Week 5 activity, next week, grocery shopping, participants must bring a grocery list for a healthy, low-cost meal for their family. The meal must have at least one food from each MyPlate food group. Participants with grocery lists will receive $10 from you to make purchases. This $10 may only be used for food. Encourage participants to bring along a bit of extra money in case they go over the $10 provided by the Learning Kitchen funds. We'll discuss more on this funding later, but try to make sure that nobody spends more than $11. Another goal of Lesson 4 is to introduce participants to unit price labels used at the grocery store. These will be helpful for next week's lesson, which includes planning and purchasing a family meal. Here is an example of a unit price stickers for two similar products. Your materials contain unit price cards for boil and bag rice, instant rice, and enriched long-grain rice. There are two key goals to keep in mind when discussing unit prices. First, which product has the lowest cost per unit? This is determined by the price inside of the orange box. And second, how much of a product will you really eat? For example, the 5-pound bag of enriched rice may have the lowest unit cost, but will your household really use 5 pounds of rice before it goes bad? And do you really have the space to store it? Unit prices can help shoppers determine whether they are paying for the food or for additional processing and packaging, such as the case with instant or boil and bag rice. The food safety quiz starts the food safety and cold storage portion of Lesson 4. Your materials contain a list of true or false questions that are designed to start conversation. Discuss the group's answers and thoughts for each question. This is another opportunity for participants to learn from one another. Each of the 7 statements in the food safety quiz is meant to highlight the correct food safety practices for keeping food from sitting in the danger zone temperature for too long. 2 handouts in participants' handbooks cover these topics. The first is Keep Food Safe, and the second is Cook Food Safely. Refer participants to these 2 handouts and make sure to review correct food handling practices that are explained on the Keep Food Safe handout. There's more information in your educator guide, and I recommend being familiar with the handouts before starting the lesson. The last portion of this lesson is to review the cold storage chart. Not all foods freeze well, and not all the foods that freeze well maintain quality for the same length of time in the freezer. Be sure to note that the recipes prepared in class today, the soup and the lasagna, both freeze very well. After reviewing the cold storage chart, review the correct procedure for storing leftovers before moving on to the Week 4 goals that we discussed a few slides back. The next week will be grocery shopping, and participation in grocery shopping requires the at-home work to be done this week. It's a good idea to clarify with everyone before class ends. Next, We'll take a look at the activities and materials for Week 5, grocery shopping. Here we see the 2 goals for the grocery shopping lesson in Week 5. By the end of this week's lesson, each participant will be able to demonstrate the ability to shop for healthy and affordable meals and to purchase safe food. There are 2 handouts for Lesson 5. The first is a guide to fruits and vegetables that are in season for each of the 4 seasons, and the second is a quick guide to canned foods and indicators of when canned goods are unsafe and should be discarded. The bulk of Lesson 5 will take place at the grocery store. The grocery shopping class will look a little different from the others since there's no cooking this week and you'll be meeting at the grocery store. You'll need to tailor the logistics to your particular class. You may decide to meet at your site and then carpool over to the store, or you might decide to meet at the store if that works better for your class. Contact the store in advance to let them know you'll be coming. You can use the store tour guide in your materials to lead you on the tour, or you can ask for a store employee to lead the tour. Either way, you'll want to visit each section of the store. There are discussion questions in your materials, so it might be a good idea to have those handy in case your participants don't have any questions of their own. You can also give questions to the participants to ask in advance. If you have a store employee giving the tour, you may also want to give them some guidelines that you want to make sure to get covered from these materials. The tour should take 15 to 20 minutes, leaving enough time for shopping after. If possible, the chef should also attend this trip. There's information for each section of the store, as well as suggested questions for the tour guide from the store in your educator materials. You will need to arrange to have $10 store gift cards for each participant to use when shopping. You can plan to pick up the certificates after the store tour or during the tour if you have more than one volunteer. Each person in the class needs to show their prepared shopping list in order to receive their gift card. If they do not come with a shopping list, we do have some backup shopping lists for recipes that they should be able to make for about $10. Please let me know in advance if you would like me to send you those lists to have on hand. Allow 30 minutes to shop and have everyone get through checkout. The goal is to use their gift certificate to purchase the items on their list to make a healthy, low-cost meal for their family within a specific budget. Only food should be purchased with the cards, and there's a few additional guidelines. Participants should try to spend as close to $10 as possible. If they do not buy at least $9 worth of food, they should return the change to you. You may want to tell them to bring spare change if possible, in case their purchase goes over by a few cents. However, they should not buy more than $11 worth of food. It's a good idea for you to let them know that you will be collecting their receipts so they know they will be accountable for their purchases. This is up to you. We will need at least a copy of the receipt you got when you purchased the gift cards. Once everyone is shopped, then you'll need to return to the site for a follow-up discussion and to allow everyone to share what they bought. Guidelines for this conversation are in your educator materials. There's not a goal sheet for Week 5. The goal is that participants cook the meal for which they purchase ingredients. You can close the lesson by announcing the details and logistics for the final class, Week 6, and announcing that Lesson 6 will cover whole grains and child feeding issues. The final lesson I will talk about in this presentation is Lesson 6, which is about whole grains and child feeding issues. The goal for this lessons are to increase the intake of whole grains, to implement appropriate child feeding practices, to feed children safe and age-appropriate foods, and to increase the use of whole grains in recipes. Start class by asking the group how they did with the goal from last week, to make a meal with the foods purchased during the last class. In addition to making the meal, ask students if they practiced the good shopping habits discussed in Week 5, using a list, using coupons, and reading unit price signs at the store, and avoiding impulse buys. I'm going to warn you up front that there is a lot of material in Lesson 6. You may decide that you need to leave out some of these activities in the interest of time, So please read the lesson carefully and decide what is most useful for your particular group if this is the case for you. Of course, if you have ample time, I encourage you to include everything. The first part of the lesson focuses on grains and serving sizes. The shopper should provide a box of cereal, and you'll need to have bowls on hand so you can let each participant pour out a typical serving or ask a volunteer to do a demonstration. Next, you'll have them measure how many cups are in the bowl. So you'll want to ask them if the bowl you provided is similar to the bowl they might use at home. You'll use this activity to begin looking at what counts as a serving in the grain group, since according to their My Plate charts, these recommendations are given in ounces. So for example, my personal recommendation is 6 ounces of grains per day. And in order to know what that means, I need to understand what counts as a 1 ounce equivalent. In this case, 1 cup of dry cereal is generally considered equivalent to 1 serving, or 1 ounce from the grain group. Take a look at this little girl's bowl. Most people guess that there are at least 3 to 4 cups of cereal in there, which would be at least half of my daily recommendation. And once you've mastered serving sizes, you will discuss the quality of choices in the grain group, which is where the subject of whole grains comes up. A quick note. The flip chart is a great tool for promoting discussion and for displaying comparisons between different foods and portion sizes. Here you can see a chart explaining what counts as a serving. You'll notice several other places in the curriculum where it will be helpful to prepare some lists or charts during class. Can you tell which one of these is whole wheat bread? Since it isn't always possible to tell just by looking, it's important to know how to read a label. We have provided some sample labels in your materials kit. However, you may want to ask the shopper to buy a bag of white, wheat, and whole wheat bread for this activity. The students will compare the ingredients and nutrition facts on the 3 labels and match each piece of bread with the bag they think it came from. You can discuss how just because a bread is brown or says wheat, it does not mean that the bread is a good source of whole grains. And I'd like to point out that there is an optional suggestion to bring in some whole grain foods to try. Many students may not have tried brown rice or whole grain pasta, so this may be a good opportunity to sample those. If you're a little bit more adventurous, you could prepare some quinoa or another less common grain. This might also be something that the host, chef, or other volunteer would be willing to do. So I encourage you to take advantage of this suggestion if possible. The second part of this week's lesson covers child feeding issues. The participant materials include handouts covering healthy drinking habits, healthy snacks and snacking habits, tips for getting children to eat, and a resource list for nutrition information online. Use these handouts to prompt conversation about each of those topics. Also included in your educator materials are food stories that describe challenges for parents. You can copy the stories onto note cards or paper and break the class into 3 groups to read the stories and brainstorm solutions to the challenges presented. Have the group select a representative to share their stories and their solutions. As a final note, please remember to administer the post-evaluations at your last class, and be sure to give them to your host along with the pre-evaluations. You also need to give each participant a subjective evaluation as well. These can be found in the online toolkit at www.hungerfreevt.org. Please note that there are also subjective evaluations for you, the chef, and the host. So please be sure to fill out and give them to your host to put with the rest of the class paperwork. And last, but certainly not least, I encourage you to recognize in some way those students who have attended at least 4 of the 6 classes. Templates for certificates can be found in the online toolkit as well. This concludes the Adult Curriculum Educator tutorial. Please do not hesitate to get in touch with me if you need anything at all. My contact information is shown here. Thank you again for your time.